Genesis chapter 19 stands as one of the most sobering and fearsome chapters in the entire Bible. It captures a moment in human history where divine judgment meets human wickedness in its rawest form. There is a heaviness to this chapter that demands reflection, a deep soul-searching that urges every listener to ask where they stand in relation to righteousness, mercy, and obedience. As we walk through this chapter together, let us open our hearts and minds not only to the wrath that fell upon Sodom and Gomorrah, but also to the mercy extended to Lot, and the lessons that echo through the ages to this very moment in your life. The chapter begins with two angels arriving in the city of Sodom at evening. The quiet of dusk falls over a city teeming with hidden sin and brazen evil. Lot is sitting at the gate, a place where city elders and decision-makers often gathered. This image alone is striking. Lot, a righteous man, living in the heart of darkness. He sees the angels and rises to meet them, bowing low. There is urgency in his actions, a pressing awareness of the danger that lurks in the night. He pleads with the visitors to stay in his house, insisting even when they say they would spend the night in the open square. Lot knew what the people of Sodom were capable of. He wasn't just being hospitable, he was trying to save them from the vile intentions of the city. And then, like a storm bursting through a quiet evening, the horror of Sodom reveals itself. The men of the city, young and old, surround Lot's house, demanding he bring out the visitors so they can violate them. There is no shame in their demand, no fear, only a deep-seated corruption that has fully consumed every corner of their soul. The fear that you feel at this moment is not just for Lot, but for the realization that a society can fall so deeply into depravity that evil no longer whispers in the shadows, it shouts from the rooftops. Lot steps out, trembling but brave. He pleads with them, calling them brothers, appealing to reason. His voice must have cracked as he said, "Do not do such a wicked thing." But his attempt to stop them is met with hostility. They accuse him of being judgmental, an outsider trying to be a judge. The mob threatens him, and the situation grows violent. At that critical moment, the angels reach out, pull Lot inside, and shut the door. Then, with divine power, they strike the men at the door with blindness. Yet even in their blindness, these men grope at the door, desperately trying to get in. Think about that, even after being struck by a miracle, they do not stop. They do not repent, they do not reflect. Their lust, their violence, their rebellion is so deeply ingrained that not even a supernatural event can break through their madness. The fear you feel now is the same fear that should grip every heart that flirts with sin, thinking it has time to turn back later. This is a picture of judgment restrained only by God's mercy, a warning that there comes a time when the line is crossed. The angels then warn Lot. They ask if he has anyone else in the city, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, because the destruction of Sodom is imminent. There is no time to wait. There is no time to debate. Judgment is coming. Lot rushes to his sons-in-law and tells them what is about to happen, pleading with them to escape. But they think he's joking. They don't believe him. Their laughter, their skepticism, is a chilling reminder of how blind the human heart can become when it is immersed in comfort, culture, and compromise. The urgency in Lot's voice is drowned by the complacency of their hearts. They stay, and they perish. As dawn breaks, the angels urge Lot to take his wife and 2 daughters and flee. Still, he lingers. That single word, linger, sends a shiver down the spine. Even with angels beside him, even with destruction looming, he hesitates. It's a mirror to so many of us. How often do we linger when God calls us to move? How often do we delay in leaving behind what we know is harmful because it's familiar, or comfortable? Even in the face of divine urgency, our hearts can be slow to obey. But the mercy of the Lord is greater than our hesitation. The angel seize Lot, his wife, and his daughters by the hand, and bring them out of the city. God's mercy literally drags them to safety. They are told to flee and not look back. They are warned to escape to the mountains, not to stop in the plain, and not to look behind them. This is not merely about geography. It is a spiritual directive. When God calls you out of destruction, he commands a complete break. No looking back, no longing, no regrets. Lot begs to go to a small town instead of the mountains, fearing the distance. Again, we see a man whose faith is mixed with fear. And yet, God grants the request. Zor becomes the refuge, and it is there, when Lot reaches safety, that the fire falls. Sulfur and fire rain down from heaven, consuming not only Sodom and Gomorrah but all the cities of the plain. The ground shakes, the sky roars. What was once a vibrant, sin-soaked city is now a smoking ruin. A terrifying silence replaces the laughter, the wickedness, the pride. In the middle of that divine wrath, Lot's wife looks back. Perhaps it was longing, perhaps regret, maybe just curiosity, but that one glance cost her everything. She is turned into a pillar of salt, a symbol of divided loyalty, a monument to hesitation. That image stands eternal. You cannot move forward in God's will while looking backward in the world's direction. Her story is a warning that even proximity to the righteous does not guarantee salvation. Her heart was still in Sodom, even though her feet were outside its gates. Abraham, miles away, wakes early and goes to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looks toward Sodom and Gomorrah and sees the smoke rising like a furnace. What he sees is not just the aftermath of destruction. He sees the justice of God in action, but also the mercy that spared Lot. Abraham had prayed for the city. He had pleaded with God to spare it if even 10 righteous could be found. But there weren't 10, not even 5, and yet God remembered Abraham's plea and saved Lot. This is the power of intercession. Never underestimate the impact of your prayers for others. Abraham's conversation with God could not save the city, but it saved the one man who was willing to walk away from it. Intercession is not wasted breath, it is a lifeline in the spiritual realm. As the chapter continues, we see Lot and his daughters living in a cave. Fear has driven them away from Zoar. His daughters, believing they are the last people on earth, hatch a disturbing plan to preserve their family line. They get their father drunk and lie with him on successive nights. From this, 2 sons are born, Moab and Ben-Ami, the fathers of the Moabites and Ammonites. This ending is both tragic and complex. It reminds us that even when we are saved from destruction, the residue of the past can cling to us. Lot's journey is one of salvation, but not without scars. His decisions led him to Sodom. His lingering nearly cost him his life. His wife turned back. His daughters, shaped by the culture they fled, made choices that reflected the moral decay they had known. Salvation does not erase consequences, but it does preserve destiny. Even through brokenness, God's plan moves forward. This chapter screams urgency. It tells us that the window of mercy is not infinite. It reminds us that judgment is real, swift, and final when it comes. But above all, it magnifies the mercy of God, who sends angels to warn, who hears the prayers of the righteous, who drags the hesitant to safety, and who, even in fire, preserves his promises. The example of Sodom is not ancient history alone, it is a living lesson. Look around at the world today. The moral decay, the normalization of evil, the rejection of truth, it all echoes the streets of Sodom. There is excitement in this realization, because it tells us that the Bible is not outdated. It is timeless, it is relevant, it is alive, and it speaks directly to us today. We must not ignore the signs. We must not linger when God calls us out. We must not look back when He tells us to press forward. There is a fear that should stir in our hearts, not a fear of hopelessness, but a fear that leads to wisdom. A fear that leads to urgency. A fear that makes us cling to righteousness like Lot clung to the hands of the angels. And there is also hope. Hope that God still saves. Hope that even in a world falling apart, there is refuge for the faithful. Hope that, like Abraham, our prayers are heard in heaven. Let this be a moment where you decide not to be like the sons-in-law who laughed, not to be like the crowd that groped at the door, not to be like Lot's wife who looked back. Let this be a moment where you move with urgency, where you obey without hesitation, where you walk away from what God is calling you to leave. If you feel the weight of this message, if something inside you is stirring, do not ignore it. That is the voice of God, reaching into your soul, calling you to higher ground. This is not just a story. This is a wake-up call. And as you take this message to heart, I invite you to walk this journey of truth with us. We are uncovering the shining truths of the Bible, one chapter at a time, not to entertain, but to enlighten, to stir your spirit, and to prepare you for what lies ahead. Subscribe to this channel, Shining Truths, and join a growing community of seekers, believers, and truth lovers who refuse to linger in Sodom when God calls us to the mountains.